Your grandfather worked 40 hours a week. He bought a house for $18,000, raised a family, saved money, retired comfortably. Your father did the same, adjusted for the times. That house now costs $120,000. Two incomes barely covered it. Retirement. He is still figuring it out. You work 40 hours a week, maybe 50, maybe 60 with your side hustle. That same house. $450,000. You can't even afford the down payment. Retirement is a fantasy you'll laugh about when you are 75, still working. 3 generations. Same work ethic. Same hours, same dream. So what changed? It is not the house. It is not you. It is not that your grandfather had some secret knowledge. The money itself changed. And here is the part that should make you furious. It didn't change by accident. Someone changed it. On purpose. And they're still changing it right now while you are watching this. Because there is a tax you pay every single day that never shows up on a bill. No politician ever admits to charging it. You never voted for it. But it is real. It is massive. And it is stealing more from you than income tax ever could. This is inflation. And it is not broken economics. It is not a mistake. It is a tool. The oldest, most effective way governments have found to take your wealth without asking permission. Let me show you exactly how the trick works. Let's start with what they tell you inflation is. They say it is when prices go up. Supply and demand. Market forces. Economic growth. Sometimes they call it the economy running hot. They make it sound natural, inevitable. Like the weather, but that is not what inflation actually is. Inflation is when the money supply increases faster than the goods and services in the economy. More money chasing the same stuff. Each dollar becomes worth less. And here is the key part. They don't emphasize. Governments control the money supply. When your government needs money, it has 3 choices. Choice 1, raise taxes. This is honest. It is also political suicide. Nobody votes for politicians who raise taxes. So this rarely happens. Choice 2, borrow money. Issue government bonds. Promise to pay back later with interest. This works for a while, but eventually you have a massive debt to pay back. Choice 3, print money. Or in modern terms, create it digitally, add zeros to the government's bank account. Use that new money to pay for things. This is where inflation comes in. When the government prints money and spends it, that new money enters the economy. There are now more dollars competing for the same groceries, the same houses, the same everything. Prices rise to match. But here is the brilliant part from the government's perspective. They get to spend that new money at yesterday's prices. They buy things, pay salaries, and fund programs with fresh money before inflation kicks in. You are at the back of the line. By the time that money reaches you through your paycheck, prices have already risen. Your salary might go up by 3%, but prices went up 7%. You just got poorer. This is inflation, a hidden tax that transfers wealth from you to whoever gets the new money first. And the most convenient part, nobody blames the government. You blame greedy corporations. You blame supply chains. You blame the store owner for raising prices. The actual source of the problem, the creation of new money, stays invisible. That is by design. Now let me show you how old this trick really is. In the year 64 AD, a Roman soldier received his pay, 1 silver denarius coin, pure silver. You could trade it anywhere in the empire. It was trusted, valuable, real money. But the Roman Empire had a problem. Wars were expensive. Roads, aqueducts, armies, all of it cost money. And raising taxes, that caused riots. Romans would burn the forum before paying higher taxes. So emperors discovered something clever. Keep minting coins with Caesar's face on them. Keep stamping them with the official seal. But slowly, quietly, reduce the silver content. Mix in copper, mix in tin. Make the coin cheaper to produce. At first, nobody noticed. A coin is a coin, right? But over the next 2 centuries, the denarius went from 95% silver to less than 5% silver. Same coin. Same image of the emperor. But there is almost no silver left. What happened? Prices exploded. A loaf of bread that cost 1 denarius now costs 100 denarii. Because everyone realized the coins were worthless. The empire had inflated the money supply by debasing the currency. Soldiers refused to fight for worthless coins. Merchants demanded payment in gold, or refused Roman money entirely. The economy collapsed into barter. The empire fell, but the trick survived. Fast forward to 1790 revolutionary France. The new government needed money desperately. They'd just overthrown the monarchy. They had wars to fight and a nation to rebuild. So they created paper money called assignats. These notes were supposedly backed by land confiscated from the Catholic Church. As good as gold, they promised. At first, it worked. People accepted the paper money. The government printed just enough to get by. But then they printed more, and more, and more. Why not? It was so easy. Need to pay the army. Print assignments. Need to buy grain, print assignments. The printing press was cheaper than taxes. By 1795, they'd printed so many assignats that the currency was worthless. A piece of bread costs thousands of assignats. Farmers refused paper money and demanded gold or barter. Riots erupted in Paris as people's savings evaporated. The government hadn't raised taxes. They just printed money. The result was the same. They took people's wealth. They just did it quietly, through inflation, until it became so obvious that people revolted. But the most famous example is Weimar Germany, after World War I, when Germany lost the war. The Treaty of Versailles demanded crushing reparations. Germany owed billions in gold to the Allied powers. Gold they didn't have. So the German government did what governments always do. They printed money, Reichsmarks, billions of them, trillions of them. By 1923, the inflation had become hyperinflation. A loaf of bread costs 200 billion marks. Workers were paid twice a day because their morning wages were worthless by evening. People carried money in wheelbarrows. Children used stacks of banknotes as building blocks. A lifetime of savings was destroyed. The middle class was wiped out. Anyone who had saved in German marks lost everything. But here is what is important. The German government paid its debts. They borrowed money in marks, and they paid it back in marks. But those marks were now worthless. They'd inflated away their obligations. Creditors got paid. Technically, but they got paid in garbage. This is how governments escape debt. They borrow money when it is valuable. They pay it back when it is worthless. Inflation does the work. Germany is the extreme example, but Britain and America did the same thing, just more slowly and more respectfully. During both world wars, Britain needed money for tanks, planes, and soldiers. Taxes couldn't cover it. Borrowing wasn't enough. So the Bank of England printed. Not recklessly like Germany, just steadily. Prices crept up during the war. After the war, a British pound bought far less than before. Savers had been quietly robbed, but nobody rioted because it happened slowly. Gradually, politely. Britain paid for its wars through inflation. The cost was spread across every person holding pounds. America did the same after World War II. The government owed massive war debts. How did they pay it back? Inflation slowly, steadily. The dollar lost value. The debt became easier to service as each dollar shrank. But the most important date in inflation history is the 15th of August, 1971. That is the day President Nixon ended the gold standard. Before 1971, dollars were tied to gold. Foreign governments could exchange dollars for gold at a fixed rate. This created discipline. You couldn't print unlimited dollars because you'd run out of gold. But by 1971, America had printed too many dollars. Foreign governments started demanding gold. Fort Knox was being drained. Nixon had a choice: stop printing and face economic pain, or cut the cord to gold. He cut the cord. From that day forward, the dollar was backed by nothing, just a government promise, fiat currency. And every other country followed, the pound, the euro later on, all became fiat currencies. Paper backed by nothing but trust, this removed the last restraint on government money printing. There was now no limit to how much money could be created, no anchor, no break. From 1971 onward, inflation became permanent, baked into the system, and unstoppable. So let's break down exactly how this works. How does inflation help governments and hurt you? Step 1. Government needs money. Let's say the government needs $1 trillion. Maybe for a war, maybe for stimulus checks, maybe just to cover this year's deficit. They could raise taxes by $1 trillion. But that is political suicide. Voters would be furious. They could borrow $1 trillion by issuing bonds, but bonds have to be paid back with interest. That debt grows. Or they can do the easy thing. They can print $1 trillion. In modern terms, the Federal Reserve creates it digitally and buys government bonds with that new money. It is called monetizing the debt. The government gets $1 trillion to spend immediately. Step 2. The new money enters the economy. The government spends that $1 trillion. They pay contractors. They send stimulus checks. They fund programs. That new money is now in circulation. There are more dollars in the economy than there were yesterday. But the actual economy, the goods and services people produce, hasn't grown. There is still the same amount of food, housing, cars, everything. More money, same stuff. Basic economics says prices will rise. Step 3, prices rise, and that is called inflation. But prices don't rise evenly. This is crucial. The people who get the new money first, like government contractors, banks, and people getting stimulus, spend it while prices are still at the old level they benefit. Then that money spreads through the economy, slowly, layer by layer. By the time it reaches you through your paycheck or your savings account interest, prices have already adjusted upward. You are paying the new prices with old money. You got poorer. Step 4. Government wins. You lose. Now here is the genius of the scam. The government borrowed money, let's say 10 years ago. They owe $100 billion, but they borrowed in dollars, and those dollars are worth less now due to inflation. So they pay back the $100 billion. But in today's deflated dollars, that is only worth $70 billion in purchasing power. They effectively got a 30% discount on their debt. Who paid that 30%? You did. Every saver, every person on a fixed income, every worker whose wage didn't keep up. Inflation is a wealth transfer, from creditors to debtors, from savers to borrowers, from workers to governments. Why is it easy for governments? This is why inflation is the perfect tool for governments. Raising taxes requires a vote and honesty. People see the bill and get angry. Inflation requires nothing. No vote, no announcement. Quietly create more money. And when prices rise, people blame anyone except the government. They blame grocery stores. They blame oil companies. They blame greed. But the government stays invisible. The perfect crime. In 2008, the global financial system collapsed. Banks were failing. The economy was in free fall. Governments responded by printing money on a scale never seen before. They called it quantitative easing, a fancy term for creating trillions of dollars out of thin air. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet went from $800 billion to $4.5 trillion in just a few years. The European Central Bank did the same. The Bank of Japan, too. That money went to bail out banks, to buy government bonds, to prop up financial markets. For a while, it looked like magic. Markets recovered. Banks survived. Disaster averted. But where did that new money go? Into assets. Stocks soared. Real estate prices doubled, then tripled. Luxury goods markets exploded. If you owned stocks, you got rich. If you owned real estate, you got rich. If you owned businesses or bonds, you benefited. If you were a worker with savings in a bank account, earning 0.1% interest, you got destroyed. Your savings lost value. Prices slowly crept up. Houses became unaffordable. The wealth gap exploded. This was inflation, just not the kind measured by the Consumer Price Index. Then what else increased? Asset price, the hidden kind. Then came 2020. Governments shut down economies due to COVID-19. Millions couldn't work. Businesses couldn't operate. So what was the solution? Again, print money. But even more this time. Stimulus checks for everyone. Unemployment benefits extended. Paycheck protection program loans, and corporate bailouts. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet went from $4 trillion to $9 trillion in months. Nearly $5 trillion was created in less than a year. For a moment, it felt like free money. Everyone got checks. Rent was suspended. Debt payments paused. But there is no such thing as free money. By 2021, inflation roared back. Real inflation. The kind you see at the grocery store. Gas prices doubled. Meat prices soared. Rent spiked 20-30, and 40% in cities. Used cars became luxury items. Who benefited? Asset owners again. Real estate investors who owned property saw rents skyrocket. Stock investors saw portfolios boom. Business owners raised prices, and profits soared. Who got crushed? Workers, the middle class, retirees on fixed incomes. Anyone living paycheck to paycheck. The government printed money. Prices rose. And ordinary people paid the tax. Some countries live in constant inflation. Argentina has been inflating its currency for decades. In the 1980s, inflation hit over 2,000% annually. Recently, it has been 50 to 100% per year. Why? Because the government spends more than it collects in taxes every year, and they print money to cover the difference. Argentine citizens have adapted. Nobody saves in pesos. When you get paid, you immediately convert to dollars, or buy something, anything, before the money loses value. This is what life looks like when the hidden tax becomes obvious, when the scam is too blatant to hide. Lebanon is another example. It was known as the Switzerland of the Middle East. Between 2019 and 2021, Lebanon's currency collapsed by 90%. Overnight, banks froze withdrawals. People couldn't access their savings. The Lebanese pound, once stable and trusted, became worthless. Doctors, engineers, teachers, and the entire middle class watched lifetimes of savings disappear in months. Why? The Lebanese government had borrowed heavily and couldn't pay back. So the central bank printed money. When trust breaks completely, currency collapses. This is the endgame of inflation. Now here's where it gets complicated. From a government's perspective, inflation isn't just evil. It is also useful. Imagine the government owes $38 trillion. That is real. That is America right now. How do you pay that back? You can't. Definitely not with taxes. The economy can't generate that much revenue. You can't cut spending enough, Social Security, Medicare, and defense. These are politically untouchable, so what do? You inflate, slowly, over time. That $38 trillion becomes easier to service as the dollars shrink in value. Inflation quietly erodes the debt. It is not honest, but it is practical. Inflation also encourages spending. If your money loses value sitting in a bank, you spend it or invest it. This keeps the economy moving. Deflation. When prices fall, it is arguably worse. Nobody spends if they think things will be cheaper tomorrow. The economy freezes. Japan dealt with this for decades. So central banks target 2% inflation. Not zero, not deflation. A little inflation, and they say it is healthy. But here is the problem. Even healthy 2% inflation means your savings lose half their value in 35 years. Your retirement fund, your emergency savings, quietly melting away, but governments never stop at 2%. When they face a crisis, they print more, 4%, 6%, 8%. Before you know it, you are at 1970s levels. It won't take 35 years to lose half the value of what you save. If you are in debt, inflation helps you. Your loan stays the same number, but inflation makes it easier to pay as your profits rise. If you are a saver, inflation destroys you. That $100,000 you saved for retirement buys less every year. The honest get punished, the cunning get rewarded. This is why inflation is fundamentally unfair. It is a transfer of wealth from the prudent savers to the strategic players, from Main Street to Wall Street, from workers to asset owners. So what do? History gives us clear lessons. Lesson 1, don't hold cash. In Rome, survivors weren't those holding debased coins. They were the ones who hoarded real silver and gold. In Weimar Germany, those with foreign currency or tangible assets survived. Those who trusted paper marks were destroyed. In the 1970s, those who held real estate and commodities preserved wealth, while cash savers got crushed. The lesson is universal. Cash is trash during inflation. Lesson 2, own things they can't print. Gold, land, real estate, commodities, productive businesses, and skills. These are inflation hedges. They hold value when currency doesn't. When the dollar loses 50% of its value, gold doesn't. Land doesn't. A rental property doesn't. These assets reprice to match inflation, but your cash doesn't. Lesson 4, invest in yourself. The one thing they absolutely cannot inflate away is your skills, your knowledge, your ability to create value. In Lebanon, doctors who could work abroad survived. In Argentina, people with international skills thrived. Your earning power is the ultimate inflation hedge. Lesson 5, stay aware. Governments will always downplay inflation. They'll change how it is measured. They'll massage the statistics. They'll tell you it is transitory. Don't believe them. Watch grocery prices. Watch rent. Watch energy costs. This is real inflation, not the government's sanitized numbers. When you see inflation rising, adjust. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for the government to admit it. Here is what I want you to understand. Inflation is not a natural phenomenon. It is not weather. It is not the invisible hand of the market. It is a policy, a choice, a tool. Governments use it because it is easier than raising taxes, because it is invisible enough that most people don't understand they're being robbed. Your grandfather could save money and retire because inflation was restrained. The dollar held its value. Savings meant something. Your father struggled because inflation started eroding that value, slowly, quietly, but relentlessly. You can't save for a house because decades of money printing have destroyed the dollar's purchasing power. What cost your grandfather $18,000 cost you $450,000. Not because houses got better, because dollars got worse. This is the hidden tax, and it will continue. Why are governments addicted to it? Because the alternative, which is living within their means, is politically impossible. So you have two choices. You can ignore this. Keep saving cash. Keep trusting that the system will reward your prudence. Keep wondering why you are falling behind despite working harder than your parents ever did. Or you can see the game for what it is. You can protect yourself. Own real assets. Build skills. Understand that the rules are rigged, but the game can still be played if you know how. The people who control money don't announce what they're doing. They don't ask permission. They just do it, and they're doing it right now. The question is, are you going to keep paying the hidden tax, or are you going to learn how to avoid it now you know the truth? What you do with it is up to you. If this changed how you see money, hit subscribe. The answers you are looking for aren't hidden in the future. They're written in the past.